As soon as I moved into my place, I was on 13 medications when I left the shelter. Within 2 months, I got off that medication. I started feeling like I wanted to live. I wasn't a zombie. I actually had a voice. And it was through the support and help through groups that they let me have that voice. So I'm the voice for the people that don't have a voice now. And we need a home. I'm angry because I see more and more people out there, and it hurts to see people suffering. We're all human beings, and we just need a place to call home.
So how did we get to this kind of problem? It's really a policy failure, and it's really the federal government backing out of its role in policy around housing. So the federal government started disengaging from affordable housing beginning in the early 1980s. And with increasing economic inequality, that's led to more homelessness. That got worse in Ontario with the Mike Harris administration, because he downloaded responsibility from the province to the municipalities and the regions. And so the responsibility for affordable housing now in the regions, at that point in the regions, it's the level of government that's least able to provide the level of support that's needed. In terms of like dealing with homelessness, the province that's leading the way in Canada is Alberta. In Alberta, they looked to Housing First as a solution to the problem of growing homelessness, particularly at Calgary and Edmonton. And then it spread to all the 7 major cities in Alberta. And they've made substantial progress. They're very well organized, they have a strong network, they influence government policy, and that's led to like a 20% reduction in homelessness across that province. And the country that's really gotten the most attention for doing a good job is Finland. Finland is a country that's reaching this functional zero, like they're getting close to that. They've transformed their shelters into affordable housing. They use rent supplements, and they've been able to, the whole country has gotten behind solving this problem. So it is a solvable problem. There's several examples of this that it's possible to do. It's such a simple concept, really. There's 2 basic parts to it. It's permanent housing, and it's supports. Those are the 2 key components to ending homelessness. There are some characteristics of what a Housing First program looks like. The first is there are no preconditions for housing. You don't have to demonstrate that you're worthy or ready or able to go into housing. You don't have to be taking your meds reliably, working on your addictions. You go straight into housing. You work on all of those issues, and once you're stably housed. Another key element is choice. And Housing First is based on the principle of choice, self-determination. People live where they want to live. And this is a review, there's an article I cited here, 80% of people across several studies, they find they want their own place, they want their own apartment. Critical to that is having a rent supplement. So we talked about that portable housing benefit. In Housing First, you should be paying no more than 30% of your income on rent. Okay? And participants have their own leases, so they are our tenants. A question that always is raised is about the cost. So we had a health economist on our team, Eric Latimer from McGill. You might have heard the story about Murray Barr he's from Reno, Las Vegas, and Murray used he was homeless, and he used all kinds of services. He was in the emergency room all the time, he was getting picked up by the cops, and originally local writer Malcolm Gladwell wrote a story about him in New Yorker called it the $1 Million Murray. He was so expensive, he used so many services, he was very costly. And so the question is can you offset those costs? Well, for the Housing First, high needs people with assertive community treatment, the cost of the program is about $22,000 a year. 96% of those costs are recovered. It's basically a break even. They break even because people are spending less time in the hospital, less time in the emergency room, less time in the police, less time in other institutions. I think the takeaway message for me from tonight is that Housing First is an approach that works. It's being used here locally. It's being scaled up all across the world, really, the developing world. And it's good. This is a good thing. I think that national housing strategy is a positive step. It's an indication the federal government's willing to get back in the housing game. I still think there are limitations with it, but this is like what citizens groups like here tonight can put pressure on to make sure that those policies that come out of that actually are enough, or they're based on the right kind of evidence, so that we don't have to fall short and say, we tried affordable housing benefit, and it doesn't work. It's not going to work if it's $200 a month. We tried Housing First, it doesn't work. It's not going to work if you don't have assertive community treatment for some of your highest needs people. So we need to really keep the pressure on, I think, for some of those policies. And I think that, this is all part of larger issues that we're facing as a society today. And I think the bigger issues are about poverty and economic inequality. We know across North America it's increasing. It's not just the U.S. and the kind of policies they've been following for the past decades, but it's Canada too. We have growing inequality. Until we're ready to face that and try to reduce that inequality, we're going to have this kind of fallout of homelessness and a variety of other social problems that I think are correctable and solvable.
So the Cambridge pilot. The Cambridge pilot actually happened between 2016 and 2018 in Cambridge. The pilot some history associated with the Cambridge pilot was that between the years of 2008 and 2016, the region of Waterloo funded the Step Home program across the region, which was a series of local social service organizations that were funded to support individuals with the experience of chronic homelessness. So in 2016, the region collaborated 4 organizations from the Step Home model in Cambridge to try a new approach to supporting people experiencing homelessness over 2 years. So an integrated team of workers from 4 Cambridge service providers worked as an integrated team to engage and transition participants from homelessness to permanent housing, while offering intensive support services to recover from homelessness and stay housed. The outcomes from the pilot, so again, we were funded to support 50 individuals from the pass list into housing. So we actually, we housed 62 individuals in the end. I believe we had actually secured housing 79 times, but we had actually housed 62 individuals. 11 individuals during that time period returned to homelessness, 8 of whom we actually rehoused again through the program, and we had a 95% success rate at the end of the pilot for housing stability for those that we did house. So our target population during the pilot was really those who had been homeless the longest with the greatest depth of need. So the majority of the folks, if not all of the folks that we housed through the pilot, were actually chronic. They were experiencing chronic homelessness. Some of them would have been living outside, and some of them had been living inside, in our shelters. So we actually used a 3-phase process to get folks out of their homelessness and into housing. So the first phase was we identified individuals on the pass list with the greatest depth of need, and they were offered the opportunity to participate in the program. So our outreach workers supported participants to get connected with income, get identification, and household references, landlord references, those sorts of things that landlords require in order to rent. And we spent some time getting to know those individuals and figuring out what their housing needs and preferences were. Phase 2 involved linking with our housing liaison workers that were part of the pilot. So those were the folks who actually went out and connected with landlords when we had some marketing tools that we used during that time period. And they actually connected with landlords and matched participants with the highest depth of need with units that existed in our community. This phase 3 was where we actually provided the follow-up home-based support services through some support coordination services, where we actually used a process called 5 essential and sequential stages of recovery from homelessness. It was a very regulated, kind of streamlined model to help folks recover from their homeless experience. One of the things that we also did was we incorporated that peer experience as a part of our team. So when we were working with folks in the community after they were housed, we offered the opportunity for them to connect with someone who was a part of our team to provide that peer-led support to help people stabilize in their housing and recover from homelessness. And it also helped us as a team to really understand the needs of folks that we were supporting. So really enrich the teamwork.
The success in implementing our strategies is going to depend on a strategic investment, dedicated, a collaborative effort of all partners in our community and all orders of government. I think that was one of Catherine McGarry's first points, is that it's not just one order of government and not just the community and not just one agency. Everyone has to be committed and have a shared approach.
It's really clear that doing what we have always done is going to get us what we've always gotten, which is not an acceptable solution. And so we all need to work together, both as service providers, as government funders, as regulators, to really work towards creating more effective and impactful outcomes. Bridges. So again, as Jeff had talked about, the definition of chronic homelessness is really about the length of time, and generally the people who are experiencing chronic homelessness, almost 100%, but not entirely, have some of the higher and more complex needs. And so are people at the bridges considered chronically homeless? Some would be, and some aren't. I mean, because people can also need shelter services, as Jeff had also talked about, for very short periods of time, and then there are some people who end up in shelters and other places where they live out their homelessness for much longer periods of time. So there are a huge number of groups and agencies and people who are concerned about homelessness in this community. And so there are a whole lot of social service groups, and in fact, what all of us up here are connected to is a thing called the Housing Stability System, which is all about working with people who are experiencing homelessness. And then, of course, there are a lot of other sectors that are also really involved. Health and justice and child welfare are just some. But what's really interesting is that in addition to all of those groups, we also have in our community, of course, a really strong sector of people with lived experience who are also our great teachers and guides, and who are absolutely essential in terms of helping us to better understand these issues. But in addition to that, we also have a number of very engaged community members, a number of funders, a number of businesses, a number of faith groups. And there are a huge number of people who are working also as partners within this project, or within working to end homelessness, and within the program that I'm really involved in, All in 2020, is about engaging the community to take transformative action, and about working to engage a number of unusual partners. And we have been really successful and been really surprised and encouraged by all of the people who really want to figure out how they can be part of the solution. One of the ways is you can share. So hopefully tonight you may have learned something. Every time I have the opportunity to sit with these folks, I always have new takeaways. I'm hoping that for many of you in the audience, there were also some new takeaways. So part of what you can help us with is by sharing whatever it is that you've learned. Donate. So here's the thing. We have one-time funding gaps, and we need your assistance to raise about $700,000 because we need some more affordable rent subsidies. And we also, one of the things that has been identified as a best practice in the United States and in many studies has been a repair fund to help both incentivize market rent landlords to participate in the Paths to Home program, and also then, if there are tenancies that have some more than usual wear and tear on units, then there would be funds to help to work to make landlords whole. But the really important thing is we need you to act. And you acted today. You are already all housing first because you chose to spend your time here tonight. And there's lots of other things you could be doing, lots of other places you can be, but you're here, engaged in this. The Citizens for Cambridge have spent an enormous amount of time organizing this event tonight because they've heard some of this stuff and said, it's kind of interesting and we think other people would be interested in it and we want to create a forum. But there's so many ways that you can act. And in some cases, it's really about sharing the gifts and talents and opportunities that you have. If you have a particular skill, chances are we can use that within the system.